Good evening and very warm welcome to all of you joining us for this special event, the Aid to the Church in Need Religion and the Freedom World Report. And this Religious Freedom in the World Report is being published for the 15th time by Aid to the Church in Need. And we're extremely grateful to our panelists joining us. We have some connection issues, which we would expect, but it's wonderful that we're in touch with Seema over in Pakistan, in Karachi, and Archbishop Sayman in northern Iraq. And we're hoping that this evening, those of you joining us will really gain a lot of information, engage in this subject, and know about the issues really undermining religious freedom in the world today. I'm not really the chair, you'll be relieved to know. Brendan O'Hara MP is going to chair this, and I'll come back in the question and answer session. And Brendan is a wonderful media man. I remember him doing a live bit of coverage from the Bekaa Valley near Zaleh, I think it was, Brendan, wandering through the camps and interviewing some of the refugees who'd fled from the terror in Syria. So he traveled with us in Lebanon. Brendan is the MP for Argyll and Butte. He's been the MP there since 2015. And we're very grateful for you, Brendan, for your support for the work of Aid to the Church in Need. And we're delighted you were able to chair this event this evening. So thank you to you all for joining us. I think His Grace Archbishop Angelos, Coptic Orthodox Archbishop in Great Britain, is there. We're delighted Fiona Bruce is joining us, the MP, the Special Envoy for Religious Freedom, Religion and Belief. She's with us, and to all of you, you're extremely welcome wherever you're watching this evening. Brendan, over to you, if I may. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Neville, and I hope my reputation withstands the next hour and a half. I'm sure we'll be fine. But it is an enormous pleasure to be here this evening and to welcome everyone who's joining us for the launch of this hugely important Aid to the Church in Need 2021 Religious Freedom in the World Report. And may I say, for me personally, and coming from a family of long-time supporters of the ACN, it's an enormous privilege for me to be asked to do this. And I reckon that of all the things I've done in my time with a Member of Parliament, none has made my mum, who's joining us from Glasgow this evening, quite so proud as the fact that I've been asked to take part in this event this evening. Of course, ideally, we would be doing this from one of the grand meeting rooms in the Palace of Westminster among a crowd of parliamentarians, friends, colleagues, and perhaps the odd dignitary to add a bit of glamour, but for very obvious reasons, that can't happen this year. But I reckon that most of us will manage, after a year, to be able to find our way around Zoom and YouTube to make this happen. So rather than the oak-panelled rooms in the Palace of Westminster, I'm afraid you have me and being hosted from my makeshift office on the banks of the Clyde. But regardless of where this evening's event is being held, I can guarantee that nothing will detract from the extremely serious message contained in this year's annual report and the challenges that it makes of each and every one of us to remember, to pray for, and to do all we can to support those faith communities around the world, those communities that are being persecuted and abused for exercising nothing more than their basic human right to hold a religious belief. And I pay enormous tribute to the authors of this report for their detailed, comprehensive and wide-ranging analysis of the scale of the problem. And I encourage everyone to read and to digest what it is contained, because even skim reading, since it was released this afternoon, it makes grim reading. The pages of this report tell of states using COVID-19 and the pandemic as a smokescreen for further persecution on numerous countries like China, Niger, Turkey, Egypt, where a denial of basic necessities of food and medical aid is often based on a person's religious identity. It details how the promotion of ethno-religious supremacy, most notably in places such as India and Myanmar, often reduces non-Buddhist and non-Hindu religious minorities to the status of second-class citizens. The increased sexual violence being used against Christian and Hindu women and girls in Pakistan, who are increasingly being abducted, raped, and forced to convert. Crimes often committed with impunity makes for harrowing reading, and of course, the appalling treatment being shown to the millions of Uyghur Muslims in China, which we'll hear more later, is a stain on the world. And what comes over loud and clear from this report is that the situation is getting worse. But the harder the situation is for our persecuted brothers and sisters, so the greater need for our help. And just because this isn't going to go away anytime soon doesn't mean that we can. We have an obligation to stand with persecuted faith communities wherever they are. And that's why the work of Aid to the Church in Need is so vitally important. But that cannot happen without your support and our support. And I'll conclude with a personal story which Neville touched on earlier. And it illustrates how the support that you give to Aid to the Church in Need does make a massive difference. In January 2019, in the depth of winter, I went with Neville and parliamentary colleague Stephen Gethens and Afzal Khan to visit the refugee camps in the Lebanese-Syrian border. The Lebanese authorities had been completely overwhelmed by the sheer numbers of people who had fled to escape from war, persecution, and sectarian violence. They arrived with next to nothing, many of them utterly destitute. And I recall seeing the great work being done by ACN-funded projects in providing shelter, food, clothing, and spiritual help to everyone who needed it. And I'll never forget celebrating the Feast of the Epiphany in the town of Zachley in the Bekaa Valley at the St. John the Merciful table as hundreds of Christians and Muslims, Syrian refugees, and local Lebanese families came together to eat and celebrate, and where parcels of aid were distributed to all who needed it by Archbishop Issam John Darwish and his flock. This really was Aid to the Church in Need in action, and it was one of the most humbling experiences of my life. So please never think that what you're doing doesn't make a difference. It really does. And for as long as people of faith are being persecuted, the world will require Aid to the Church in Need, and Aid to the Church in Need will require you. And on that note, I'm absolutely delighted. It's a great pleasure to hand over to John Pontifex, Head of Press and Information at ACN, who will guide us through the report and a video for the next few minutes. Over to you, John.
Thank you very much indeed, Brendan. I hope you all can hear me. It's a great pleasure to be able to talk through a little bit about the findings of this year's Religious Freedom in the World report. More than 2 years in gestation and postponed on account of the COVID pandemic, we are at long last able to launch the Aid to the Church in Need, Religious Freedom in the World 2021 report. As Neville alluded at the start, the report draws on many, many years of ACN work in the field of global research into the phenomenon of religious persecution. This is the 15th edition of the report, one that builds on the work of previous years, with which I've been very much involved as editor-in-chief over much of that time. The report for 2021 draws, as ever, on the charity's international expertise, fulfilling, as it does, more than 5,000 projects across 150 countries worldwide. This report is by any measure huge. It runs to at least 700 pages, and that excludes the executive summary, which alone is about 25,000 words. So you can imagine the amount of work that's been involved in producing this. It does indeed represent one of the most global, comprehensive assessments of a topic that is of seminal importance for our time. And I use that word seminal advisedly, I feel, because only yesterday did news come through that Daesh, ISIS, had issued a video showing the killing of 3 men, including a Coptic Christian man named Nabil Habashi Salama, age 62. And the video, which brings back chilling memories of the many videos that Daesh produced over its time in presence in the world, ends with a grim warning to, and I quote, Christians in Egypt. And it's for people like Nabil Salama that ACN produces this great work. The report examines the situation for all major faith groups in as many as 196 countries, which amounts to almost every country, every nation on earth. Involving more than 30 academics, journalists, and in-country experts, the report provides a global and regional analysis of religious freedom trends. Well, in a moment, we're going to see a video that encapsulates the core findings. But ahead of that, I'm just going to make a few opening comments about some of the points that emerge most strongly as a result of this great work that we've undertaken. First, we can see that persecution of faith groups has dramatically increased in more than 95% of the world's worst offending countries. And these worst offending countries number 26, and they are the likes of North Korea, of course, the likes of India, the likes of China. Indeed, we found that in Africa, all the so-called red countries, the countries of worst persecution, characterized by that color red, designating the worst category, every country of that red color in Africa showed a decline, be it Mozambique in the southeast, Libya in the north, Mali, Nigeria, of course, in West Africa, and Democratic Republic of Congo in the center. And in Asia, the report found that in places such as India, as I mentioned earlier, and also Burma, Myanmar, where, of course, Rohingya Muslims have been so badly persecuted. And we'll hear shortly about the situation with regard to the Uyghur Muslims in China. So what might we say accounts for this decline? Well, one major factor that unites many of these countries of decline is what we're describing as the weaponization of technology, be it artificial intelligence, AI, facial recognition software, remote mobile phone access, cybercrime. The frontier of persecution, we can say, has, over the period under review, shifted markedly to become a frontier that's online. It's a screen time phenomenon, persecution today. All the more so during the COVID pandemic, where lockdown has meant more and more people than ever before have had to log on in order to worship communally, rather than obviously go to their local church, to their local mosque, to their local temple. In Africa, this global phenomenon making use of technology has seen the rise of what we call transnationalist Islamist networks, including what the report calls a cyber caliphate, which we understand, and I quote from the report, is expanding globally and is now a tool of online recruitment and radicalization. We say, and we conclude, Islamist terrorists employ sophisticated digital technologies to recruit, radicalize, and attack. And meanwhile, of course, in China, the Communist Party is controlling religious groups with the help of as many as 626 million AI, artificial intelligence enhanced surveillance cameras and smartphone scanners. So for further details, let's now turn to the video itself that encapsulates, as I say, the findings of our report. So let's watch and listen to the video before we come back when I'll make a few final remarks. Thank you very much.
Based on an evaluation of countries all over the globe, the Aid to the Church in Need Religious Freedom in the World Report 2021 finds that violations against this fundamental human right have expanded and accelerated significantly since our last survey in 2018. Close to 4 billion people live in the 26 countries classified as suffering the most intense attacks on religious freedom. Almost 50% of these countries are in Africa. Over the last 2 years, transnational jihadist groups who systematically persecute all those who do not accept the extreme Islamist ideology have consolidated their presence in sub-Saharan Africa. While a big part of the territory is not accessible to humanitarian aid workers, governments are either unable or in some cases apparently unwilling to address the issue. Only recently have multinational task forces been established to help the local governments. In Asia, China and North Korea are the worst offenders, where religious freedom is non-existent, as are the majority of human rights. In China, state control is increasingly oppressive. Mass surveillance, including artificial intelligence-refined technology, a social credit system that rewards and punishes individual behavior, and brutal crackdowns on religious and ethnic groups enforce the state supremacy. This is particularly evident through mass internment and coercive re-education programs, affecting more than 1 million, mostly Muslim, ethnic Uyghurs in Xinjiang province. In Myanmar, ongoing assaults against Christians and Hindus in Kachin State have been cast in the shadow of a massive multi-phased attack by the military and other armed groups against the 1 million mostly Muslim Rohingya population in Rakhine State. A growing challenge to religious freedom in Asia comes from expanding ethno-religious nationalist movements. The trend affects billions in this continent, mainly in democratic or semi-democratic contexts, such as in Hindu-majority India and Buddhist-majority Sri Lanka and Myanmar. The profound impact of religious freedom violations is most evident in Pakistan, where vulnerable women and girls of minority faith groups are abducted, raped, and obliged to change their faith in so-called forced conversions. The rights of these girls and women are so comprehensively denied that they become slaves. In the 36 countries marked in orange in our categorization, full religious freedom is neither enjoyed nor constitutionally guaranteed. During the period under review, President Erdogan of Turkey took steps to position the country as a global Sunni power, threatening the rights of other faiths in the process, as exemplified by the conversion of the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul into a mosque. Islam is promoted in every aspect of public life. In some states in the Middle East, South and Central Asia, and the former Soviet countries, freedom of worship is guaranteed, but not full religious freedom. Furthermore, in some countries, conversion from the majority religion is forbidden by law, while in others suppressed as a result of strong societal pressures. The COVID-19 pandemic has had profound implications for human rights, including that of religious freedom. Militant groups have taken advantage of governments who have been distracted by the need to concentrate on tackling the pandemic. In Africa, for example, Islamist extremists have increased attacks, thereby entrenching territorial gains and recruiting new members. Pre-existing societal prejudices against minority religious communities also led to increased discrimination. For example, in Pakistan, where Muslim charities denied Christians and members of other minority faith groups access to food and medical aid. In the West, emergency measures taken in response to the pandemic impacted freedom of assembly and religious freedom, prompting criticism and debate. In this report, we've introduced for the first time a new category titled Countries Under Observation, where we have observed new factors which could have a significant impact on religious freedom in the future. Evidence for this category is the violent demonstrations in Latin America, where protesters attacked and destroyed religious symbols and property. In some regions, violent hate crimes were carried out against religious leaders and members of the faithful. Pope Francis has defined what he terms polite persecution, in which evolving values and new cultural norms have consigned religions to what he calls the quiet obscurity of the individual conscience. For example, in the West, the right to conscientious objection on religious grounds for healthcare professionals in relation to issues concerning abortion and euthanasia is no longer meaningfully protected in law. But the period under review has also seen significant change for the better. There was important progress in terms of religious dialogue, and faith leaders were able to play an increasingly important role in conflict resolution, helping to bring warring sides to the negotiating table. The visits of Pope Francis to the United Arab Emirates resulted in the signing of a document titled Human Fraternity for World Peace and Living Together. Dramatic world events, be they in Africa, Asia, or indeed in the Middle East, have led to an unprecedented rise in the most serious of claims, namely genocide. The Religious Freedom Report reflects the mission of ACN to be a voice for those who are suffering and silenced as a result of persecution. As Pope Francis said in 2015, in a world where various forms of modern tyranny seek to suppress religious freedom, it is imperative that the followers of the various religions join their voices in calling for peace, tolerance, and respect for the dignity and rights of others.
So I would like to pay a very special tribute to all my colleagues involved in producing the Religious Freedom in the World Report 2021. And to view the full report, please visit the website www.acninternational.org/religious freedom report. You can find it on our website, acnuk.org. So there have been some technical issues concerning the display of some of the country reports. But if you go to the individual country you're interested in, you'll see a little sign that says download country report, and there you'll be able to access the full report that's there for you to read. Well, the report's main objective is to make people aware of those who suffer for beliefs sincerely held and peacefully expressed. But unless we are fully informed about who is suffering, where they're suffering, how they're suffering, we're entirely unable to actually help them. And I mention this because we are operating in an environment often characterized by what might be described as faith blindness. So often religious freedom has been labeled an orphaned right. Religious freedom, perhaps especially for Christians, is a right that dare not speak its name. It's true that governments, including our own, have taken great steps in articulating the need for religious freedom, the importance of religious freedom. And I think specifically here of the Bishop of Truro's independent review for the Foreign Secretary on Foreign and Commonwealth Office support for persecuted Christians, with which we at ACN here in the UK were heavily involved in terms of research and other evidence-finding tasks. However, articulating the need for religious freedom is one thing. What counts in many ways is doing something about it. And that's what initiatives such as Aid to the Church in Need's Red Wednesday campaign and a movement and activities are for. Last year, of course, as you will remember, those of you who follow the work of Aid to the Church in Need regularly, we focused on the campaign for Mara Shabazz. We called on the Prime Minister Boris Johnson to give Mara Shabazz asylum. Mara, of course, was abducted, raped, and forcibly married and converted to Islam, aged just 14. When she escaped, she said that in her heart she had remained a Christian, and to her abductor, this was an act of apostasy. And ever since, she has suffered death threats, and she has been in hiding. And there have been ongoing fears which have highlighted the need for us to act and provide asylum. And we're very, very grateful to the 12,000 or more people who signed our petition calling for Boris Johnson to provide her and her immediate family with asylum. We have not yet succeeded in that initiative, but we continue to appeal to the UK government, to Boris Johnson, to offer asylum to people like Myra who are directly at risk because of the faith that they profess. And it shows that sadly, faith blindness is very much alive and well. We continue to advocate for Myra and others like her. And we invite you, please, to continue to support Aid to the Church Needs, Red Wednesday, and other initiatives. And so please do sign our ACN e-newsletter for updates about what's going on. Of course, Red Wednesday is taking place on the 24th of November. So we look forward to telling you more about that and how you can get involved in activity for those who suffer. The central objectives behind this report are not only to raise awareness of those who suffer, but to inspire action on behalf of those who suffer to stop the persecution. We need to break the cycle of violence and oppression in which people the world over are denied their right to religious freedom. So with that, I'll hand you back and thank you very much.
Thank you for that, John. Very much appreciated. And as the report points out, one of the most challenging environments in which to be a Christian is northern Nigeria. And therefore we are extremely pleased that Bishop Dome, who's ordained Bishop of Maiduguri in August of 2009, which is at the heart of that area of northern Nigeria, in which suffers most from the attacks of Boko Haram and its violent campaign. We're delighted that he has managed to make a video for us explaining the challenges that his community and his flock face every day, including the awful massacre in November 2020, in which 110 people were killed. Bishop Dome has been a long-term supporter and partner of Aid to the Church in Need, and we're delighted to be able to share his video with you.
I am Bishop Oliver Dimedashe, the Catholic Bishop of the Catholic Diocese of Maiduguri, northeastern part of Nigeria. The serious problems Nigeria faces today began with the formation of Boko Haram, which means Western education is evil. The group's initial aim was to purify Islam in northern Nigeria. In 2019, after the killing of its founder, Muhammad Yusuf, Abubakar Shekau took over and a campaign of insurgency began. The attacks consist of suicide bombers and armed assaults on civilian and military targets. They also routinely kidnap people, most famously the Chibok girls in 2014, when 276 mostly Christian girls were kidnapped, 112 of whom were still missing until an unconfirmed number escaped this year. Nigerian human rights organization Intersociety estimates that the resulting conflict has killed up to 12,000 Christians since June 2015. Overall, at least 36,000 people have died as a result of the conflict. The United Nations estimate that 1.4 million children have been displaced by the violence. Additionally, Islamized Fulani herdsmen have been attacking Christians in the Middle Belt of Nigeria for the last few years. These groups have deliberately attempted to demoralize Christians by the attacking during the Holy Festival of Christmas. For example, in 2020, Boko Haram attacked in Pemi, Chibok on Christian Eve, killing 11 people and razing 2 church buildings to the ground. In 2019, Boko Haram killed 7 in a Christmas Eve attack. On Boxing Day 2019, Islamic State West Africa Province, ISWAT, released a video showing the beheading of 10 Christians. and the shooting of one Muslim. The religious component in this conflict is clear. On January 8, 2020, 4 seminarians were kidnapped from the Good Shepherd Seminary in Kaduna. 3 of them were eventually released, but the final one, 18-year-old Michael Nadi, was killed. In an interview with Nigerian paper The Daily Sun, Mustafa Muhammad, currently in jail, said he killed Nadi because he continued preaching the gospel and asking me to change my evil ways. That is why I killed him. This has similarities with the case of Leah Sharibu, who was kidnapped by Boko Haram with 109 other schoolgirls in 2018 when she was 14. However, she was the only one not released due to her refusal to renounce her Christian faith and convert to Islam. Muslims have also fallen foul of the violence. For example, the Adamawa State Chapter of Muslim Council said that between 2013 and 2017, in the state of Adamawa, 5,247 Muslims were killed by Boko Haram. In 2017, a suicide bomber struck a mosque in Adamawa State and killed more than 50 people. Many other such attacks take place regularly. Unfortunately, the threat has spread beyond Nigeria, and the Sahel region has now become a haven for groups, including Boko Haram, that have pledged allegiance to the Islamic State. Chad, Mali, Niger, and Nigeria are all fighting the spread of extremism. Elsewhere, the Islamic State declared its Central African province in the Democratic Republic of the Congo in 2019. Attacks in Zimbabwe increased dramatically in the last 2 years, killing up to 2,000 people and making 310,000 people homeless. Following the defeat of Daesh, that is ISIS, in Iraq and Syria, Africa has become a new epicenter for extremism. For the threat to be countered, it will require international collaboration and the states of Africa working together to defeat a common enemy. For those who wish to help, alongside supporting organizations such as Aid to the Church in Need, that is ACN, I ask that you pray for the end of the violence, in particular the Rosary. Back in 2014, in front of the Blessed Sacrament where I was praying, I received a vision of Jesus. He offered me a sword in that vision, which then turned into a rosary. He told me that Boko Haram is gone 3 times, and he disappeared. And since then, we have been praying the rosary and engaging in other Marian devotions in the entire diocese. And Mama Mary is really helping us to defeat our enemy. That is why we find that a lot of miracles have been happening. One of such is that the priests have not been touched. No priest has been touched by Boko Haram. And I too have not been touched by Boko Haram. It's a clear sign that our Mother Mary is protecting us. And so with fervent prayer and for fervent devotion to Our Lady, the enemy will certainly be defeated. Please join me in praying that the Lord will restore peace and prosperity to our diocese and the entire country, Nigeria. And may God, whose power is at work in us, is powerful enough and more than powerful enough to carry out his purpose beyond all our hopes and dreams, be glorified in the church and in Christ Jesus to the last generation of eternity. Amen. Ephesians chapter 3, verses 20 to 21. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Thank you to Bishop Dome for sharing that sometimes harrowing testimony with us about life as a Christian in northern Nigeria. I'm sure our thoughts and our prayers and our support goes with us to him and his flock in Nigeria. Of course, Nigeria is not alone, as we've heard, and another part of the world which has suffered enormously in recent decades has been Middle East, in particular from Iraq. We are delighted to be joined by Archbishop Nathaniel Nizar Seman of Hadib, Erbil, who's speaking to us live this evening. The Archbishop has witnessed probably more than most and experienced more than most of the genocide of religious communities in his area at the hands of Daesh. He is a good friend to Aid to the Church in Need, having lived in the UK for many, many years as chaplain to the Syriac Catholic community. The eagle-eyed among us may have spotted His Grace as rubbing shoulders with the Pope a few weeks ago when the Pope visited Erbil, and I know he was involved in the planning of that visit, and we're absolutely delighted to invite him to speak to us tonight live from Erbil. Your Grace.
Good afternoon to everyone. And first of all, please allow me to thank Church in Need for giving me this opportunity to speak to you about the true situation of Christians community in Iraq. And I would like, in anticipation, to thank you for all of you for listening to me. Then I would like to congratulate the Church in Need on this report, which is great, really. I would like on my speech to highlight the difficulties and the challenges we are facing as Christians, but not to be understood as a sign of surrender or defeated, but to assure that our future will be better in Iraq and we will stay for many years to come in our original land. So let us start with Iraqi's constitution, which poses serious problems for Christians and other communities. And if you allow me, I'm not going to mention word minorities. I try to avoid using this word because it will make us lose all our rights in the Middle East. We call ourselves communities, no matter what is our number. I prefer this word than using the minorities. The Iraqi constitution, it can be argued that it provided fertile ground for groups like Daesh, ISIS, to emerge from. And just to mention that Daesh mentality is not over yet as a mentality. Article 2 to the Iraqi constitution, paragraph 1, states that nothing can contradict Islam, while the principle of democracy, as we know, recognized rights and freedom for every human being, no matter what is his religion. Under the same Article 2, paragraph 2, the Islamic identity of most Iraqis and the religious rights of Christians, Yazidis, Mandain, Saibin are equally protected. However, in practice, Christians often end up as a second-class citizen because of Article 2, paragraph 1, which puts the supremacy of Islam above all else. And just for example, if you are a Muslim and you want to convert, or you convert to another religion, you will be punished, and punished by death. Then, as we know, Iraq has a rich history of culture and religious diversity. I assure you, an Iraq without this diversity is simply not Iraq. The Christian community in Iraq can trace their origins back to apostolic times, to the 1st century. And the three main Abrahamic religions, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, have their roots in the land we call today Iraq. This was seen in Pope Francis' recent visit to Ur, believed to be the birthplace of Abraham. Today, we don't have any Jewish community in Iraq. I would say, unfortunately. All the Jewish people were forced to leave Iraq time ago. In a sense, taken under the old regime, there were 1.5 million Christians. The number today is more or less than that. And I prefer not mentioning the number. The soul of Iraq will be lost if it loses its religious diversity. And to say the truth, Iraq, without its diversity, will be back to the dark ages. For Iraq to remain Iraq, the government must take steps to protect the religious communities of our country, the various religious communities. One thing the Iraqi government can do today immediately is for the Iraqi federal authorities to take direct oversight of policing in the Nineveh Plain. Nineveh Plain, where is the majority of Christians living now, it's kind of surrounded by other militia. And to resolve this problem, I think the best solution is to have local police from the local people, from the Christian people. Because the various militia should not be present, and I highlight this, should not be present as they are divisive and are motivated by a desire to suit the needs of their group. We spoke about this subject many times with many ambassadors in Iraq. I hope will be taken seriously, and we can see around our cities just Iraqi army, and inside the city, police from the local people. What about the UK government? I think the UK government can do more to help Iraq. UK having the world's sixth biggest economy and a globally fierce military, the UK also has a unique relation with Iraq. The country, as we know, was formed in 1920 when it was under control of Great Britain. Then, of course, there was the 2003 Iraqi war, which helped create the vacuum that Daesh stepped in 2014. I do believe that UK should be doing more to lobby the Iraqi government to protect of its various communities. The Iraq government will listen to the UK if it uses its voice properly. So please make sure to speak with Iraqi government to respect and to do something to modify the constitution in a way can help us as a Christian community to stay here for many and many years. The UK government should call for direct federal oversight of policing, especially in the Nineveh Plain, as I mentioned, the historical heartland of the Christian community. We hope, and that's very important, that we will not be a price paid for any international agreement. I think the politicians, they can understand what I mean. If there is any international agreement going on, we hope that the Christian and the Nineveh Plain will not be a victim, and we are not going to pay again the price for this international agreement. I personally had a close relation with Aid to the Church in Need for a number of years. And indeed, I spent 14 years based in London, in Holy Trinity Catholic Church in Hammersmith, West London, and had responsibility for all Syriac Rite Catholic in UK. ACN has given me moral support for several years. And I know firsthand that the work the charity does in Iraq makes the lives of Christians demonstrably better. I am relatively new to the post as Archbishop of the new Diocese of Riyadh Erbil, and in the midst of a rebuild for the Christian community following the genocide crimes of Daesh, which revenged my flock. ACN has provided vital aid and support to Iraq throughout this period of restoration and recovery, including emergency aid, repairs to the houses and church buildings, especially in the Nineveh Plain, and providing medical assistance and other urgent support during the COVID-19 pandemic. Additionally, ACN pledged $1.5 million in a new program for the Catholic University of Erbil, belong to the Chaldean Diocese, which will offer 150 scholarships to the university to give out to young Iraqi Christians in the next few years. So on behalf of everyone, every single Christian here in Kurdistan of Iraq or in the Nineveh Plain, I would like many thanks to the Church in Need. I would like to finish on a positive note. My Christian faith teaches me that there is always reason for hope. That no matter how bad things seem, the resurrection of Christ shows us that a new future is always around the corner. The recent visit of Pope Francis to Iraq in early March was a visit of huge symbolic value to the Christians here, showing us that there is hope for our future, and that the international community has not forgotten us. And I hope we will never be forgotten. We like this land. We want to stay in this land. We want to witness our faith and to practice freely our faith in this land, relying on the people of goodwill and on the international community. Many thanks to you all.
Thank you so much for those wise words, Your Grace, challenging us as politicians to highlight the plight of the Christian community to the United Kingdom government, and to remind the government of its responsibilities to them, and that we have a role to play in ensuring that the Christian, the Yazidi and the Baha'i communities do have a future in Iraq, and we must be part of securing that future for them. Which is a very good segue into introducing a number of my parliamentary colleagues. I mean, we have a multitude of political differences between us, but there are few issues which unite parliamentarians more than the issue of religious rights and religious freedoms. And I'm delighted that Alexander Stafford, Member of Parliament, Conservative MP for Rother Valley, is joining us this evening. Alexander has a long-held interest in the plight of Christians in the Middle East, and so it's an excellent fit to follow Your Grace on this. Alexander studied history at Oxford and was also president of Oxford University Conservative Association before taking the career path into elected politics. So without further ado, Alexander, over to you.
Thank you very much. As well as being president of the Conservatives, also president of the Catholic Society in Oxford as well, which is probably a bit more relevant. But it is my great pleasure to be here today and speak to you all about an issue which is so close to my heart, both politically and personally: religious rights and freedoms across the globe. Many of you will know, as I mentioned, that I'm a Roman Catholic, but my interest in religious freedom extends to all faiths and none, is my fervent belief that societies are enriched by religious diversity and plurality. Our own United Kingdom is evidence of the success of vibrant, multi-faith communities where we live and worship side by side. This vision of coexistence is one that I desire for religious groups around the world, in Pakistan, Nigeria, Iraq, or the People's Republic of China. And that is why I welcome ACN's report today, which calls on the government to actively protect and promote besieged religious minorities in these countries. I am particularly exercised by the plight of Christians in the Middle East. In fact, I've spoken many times in the House of Commons about persecuted Christians the world over, alongside issues of stability and human rights in the Arab world. This interest in Christianity in the region has roots in my own faith, but also in my academic background, studying the Middle East history at university. The Middle East, as we mentioned, is the birthplace of the three major Judeo-Christian religions and is of immense importance to Christians. Jerusalem, for example, has been contested for centuries. Even amongst the violence and bloodshed, there have been long periods of peaceful Christian, Muslim, and Jewish coexistence. With different faiths living in such close proximity and claiming similar important sites, it makes sense the Middle East was a religiously diverse place. Strangely, however, in a time when Western countries are becoming ever more multicultural and multi-faith, the Middle East is experiencing exactly the opposite trend at an alarming rate. The rise of radical fundamentalist Islam and the vacuum left by instability and weak governments has pushed Christians and Jews outside of Israel and other religious minorities to the brink of extinction, the very lands that gave birth to these belief systems. It's a loss not only for countries such as Iraq, but also for the wider religion and the very cultural tapestry of humanity itself. Throughout the Middle East and the wider Muslim world over the past decade, we have seen the collapse of regional security. The Taliban have taken back more territory in Afghanistan at any time since the 2001 invasion, pulling much of the countryside, rolling back hard-won freedoms as they go. Rapid and unconditional withdrawal of Western forces threatens to plunge the country into a new state of civil war. Chaos reigns in Libya, threatening to spill over into the neighbouring North African states. Extremism is spreading throughout the Sahel and sub-Saharan Africa. Creeping authoritarianism in Turkey, the implementations of harsh Islamic laws in Iran, violence against minorities in Pakistan, and reigning instability in Yemen, a big picture for the wider region. Remaining Christian populations of strictly Middle Eastern relevance tend to be concentrated in Syria and Iraq. The devastating barbarism of ISIS in the Levant has decimated precious minorities which have lived here for thousands of years, most famously Christians and Yazidis. Without urgent and effective intervention, we risk losing them irreversibly and permanently. We cannot stand by and bear witness to what is quite frankly religious cleansing. It is incumbent upon all of us, religious and irreligious, to take a stand. So what can we do? Firstly, it's absolutely vital to bring pressure to bear on justice wherever we see it. We act most effectively when the UK government engages through diplomacy with counterpart governments and countries' concerns. For example, in recent times, I've asked the British government to secure guarantees from the Iraqi central government to prioritise security for vulnerable religious minorities in the Nineveh Plains. I continue to push this. The projects undertaken by organisations such as ACN International are critical in working with parliamentarians to bring these important issues to the attention of ministers. And likewise, the International Freedom of Religion or Belief All-Party Group is leading the way within Parliament to galvanise support for the world's most fragile religious communities and to ensure they have strong and ceaseless voice. It's important to note that this UK government has not been inactive on issues of global religious freedom, however. In fact, the very opposite is true. Bishop Oturo's recent review was welcome and timely. Reports and recommendations were divided into short, medium and long-term priorities. The UK government committed to implementing all 22 recommendations in a way that I believe will bring real improvements to the lives of those persecuted because of their faith. And I'm really pleased to note that more than half of the recommendations have already been implemented or are in the process of being implemented. I am particularly encouraged by the creation of the UK Global Human Rights Sanction Regime, responding to recommendations in the report that we must impose sanctions against those who persecute religious communities. Furthermore, the launch of the John Bunyan Fund for Freedom of Religious and Belief has funded 15 research projects that look at challenges facing different religious groups. This is great progress. I do commend the government for visibility and robustly standing up for the rights of the faithful everywhere. We must face down repression wherever we find it and protect the world's most vulnerable, regardless of race, crowd or creed. And I shall continue to fight in the UK Parliament, and many of my colleagues will, to to fight for those who are marginalised or oppressed because of their beliefs. I'd like to thank my fellow speakers and the ACN International for their contributions and actually keeping this at the forefront of people's attention.
Thank you for that, Alexander. Very much appreciated those words, and I'm sure it's not gone unnoticed the support that you have given the ACN and the wider FORB community in the House of Commons. Another valued parliamentarian and good friend is Afzal Khan, who's a Labour MP for Manchester Gorton. As I mentioned at the beginning, I got to know Afzal when we went to Lebanon together in 2019, and we've kept in touch fairly regularly ever since. In 2005, Afzal became the first Muslim Lord Mayor of Manchester and was recognised in 2008 for his work in race relations with the awarding of a CBE. He has been an outspoken and incredibly vocal critic of the Chinese government and its treatment of Uyghur Muslims, and we're delighted that he is with us this evening to talk a bit more about the campaign and about the plight of the Uyghur Muslims in China. Afzal, over to you.
Thank you very much, Brendan. Can I start by saying it's a pleasure to be here among such esteemed guests and to see so many friendly and familiar faces. And like you just said, Brendan, that I did visit Lebanon with yourself and Neville a few years ago to visit refugee camps. And I must say, the work of the Aid to Church in Need is fantastic and really helps to shed a light on those minorities who are being persecuted for their faith around the world. Religious discrimination is a blatant abuse of human rights, and it can rear its ugly head in everyday life. Here in the UK, the chilling reality of Islamophobia can be seen in the government's own hate crime figures, which reveal that British Muslims suffer the highest number of hate crimes year after year. Arguably, the most distressing and horrific persecution we see today is that of the Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang, China. I'd like to add that Muslims are currently observing the holy month of Ramadan, a month of fasting, charity, and prayer. It is time for Muslims to reflect, to strengthen their family, and to give to others in serving humanity. I can't express enough how much it pains me that millions of Uyghur Muslims are facing some of the harshest abuses one can imagine during this holy period. My prayers are with my Uyghur brothers and sisters, and I ask everyone of faith or of no faith to keep the Uyghurs in your prayers too. As the Vice Chair of the APPG on Uyghurs, I have been highlighting the plight of Uyghurs Muslims for several years and have heard firsthand the harrowing testimonies of the Uyghurs, the family members and those who have witnessed what I can only call inhumane and chilling human rights abuses. Claims that 1 million and perhaps as many as 3 million Uyghurs, Kazakhs, and other ethnic groups have been rounded up and driven into the camps. And this has been confirmed by credible human rights organizations such as Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, and accepted by the United Nations and others. Uyghurs are arrested and sent to detention camps for acts as basic as having WhatsApp downloaded on their mobile phones, having relatives living abroad, accessing religious material online, having visited particular countries, or engaging in religious activities. Sometimes no reason is given at all. They have no access to legal counsel, no mechanisms for appeal, and often the families are not told where the detainees is held or when they will be released. A recent report by the BBC detailed the horrors that Uyghur women are subjected to including sexual abuse, rape, and torture. Evidence has also shown gross human rights violations, including forced labor, detention, sterilization, organ harvesting, and denouncement of religion. The CCP appears to be engaged in what some experts are calling a campaign of demographic genocide. I do fear that the gravity of my words and efforts are simply not being matched by the world's reaction, and indeed, this very government. The persecution of the Uyghur is not new. For decades, they have faced repression at the hands of the Chinese Communist Party, but it has escalated to an entirely new scale. And that is why I've been urging the government to take action, to sanction Chinese officials, and to support the genocide amendment. Unsurprisingly, perhaps, they failed their moral obligation to support such an important amendment, which would have been a watershed moment for Uyghur Muslims. The actions that the Chinese authorities are taking in Xinjiang contravenes China's own constitutional provisions on freedom of religion and its obligation under the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The government must continue to press the Chinese government to close the detention camps, seize the indiscriminate surveillance and restrictions on religion and culture, and to allow independent experts and UN officials, including the United Nations High Commissioners for Human Rights, proper access to Xinjiang. In conclusion, because the words never again are utterly meaningless if we fail to take action, the government maintains that it is not yet a genocide in legal terms, yet the mounting the evidence points to a cultural genocide, crime against humanity, and mass atrocities on a grave scale. History will remember us, and we have a moral duty to step in and stop these heinous crimes. Just a few months ago, we marked International Holocaust Memorial Day. Powerful interventions from faith communities, including the Board of Deputies of British Jews, have passionately called on the government to support this amendment. And the Jewish community has even drawn parallel between the horrors in Xinjiang to the Holocaust. Despite this, the government continues to drag its feet on holding China to account and instead puts trade above human rights. After the genocides in Rwanda, Srebrenica, Darfur, we said never again. I hope we can all agree here that we cannot add the Uyghurs to that list. I urge everyone here to not turn a blind eye to millions of innocent lives being of political interest. Thank you once again for inviting me to speak on this important subject, and I reaffirm my commitment to do this hugely important cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Afzal, for that. Very, very much appreciated. And I can say, as SNP spokesperson and international human rights, one of the most awful experience I've had was meeting and hearing the testimony of Uyghur women who have escaped China and are now able to share their stories with the world. The unthinkable horror experienced by these women must be called out, and we owe you and your colleagues a huge debt of gratitude. I mean, we thank you for the work that you do. Of course, it's not just women in China, but as the report says, sexual violence against women and girls is being used as a weapon around the world, shamefully and disgracefully. And we are delighted, therefore, hopefully technology allowing that we can now join Seema Maheshwari from live from Karachi. Now, Seema is a Hindu human rights activist who's based in Pakistan and is an expert on what's going on in terms of kidnapping, forced conversions and forced marriages of non-Muslim girls in Pakistan. She's a member of the Vigilance Committee on the Human Rights Department of the local government in the Sindh province and a member of the South Asia Forum for Freedom of Religion and Belief. So hopefully we will be able to make contact with Seema. Seema, are you there? Are you with us?
Hello, good evening to everyone. I hope you all are doing well. First of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity to express and represent my community and the challenges and issues which are faced by our community and other religious minorities in our country. Well, it is very obvious that the minorities, as well, I was hearing to all the representatives of the different countries, the minorities and especially religious minorities, whoever living in different parts of the world, are facing the different issues, challenges in a different way. As I can conclude to say that minorities in India, especially Muslims, they are facing double and triple types of multiple issues and challenges, and same as the Hindu community, Christian and other religious minorities living in Pakistan, they are facing the another and different types of issues and challenges here. Well, Pakistan is a democratic country, and the constitution of Pakistan promises the equality and justice to all of its citizens. It corresponds the economic, social, uh, political rights, and even the freedom of expression, belief, faith, and worship. But still, minorities in Pakistan, either they are Hindu, Christian, Baha'i, or other, which make almost the 4% of the population of entire the country. But still, they are facing the different challenges and different issues. Sometimes religious minorities, they are attacked by their they are attacked on their worship places. Sometimes they have been facing the challenges of grabbing of lands and graveyards, and they are pushed to on the different issues and challenges. Even in Pakistan, the Hinduism, from which community I personally belong, is the second largest religious group which is practices in Pakistan, and mainly it lives in the provinces of Sindh. As well, the Christian community is the thickly populated in the provinces of Punjab. Um, well, there are so other minorities, but they are in less in population as compared to the Hindu communities and Christian community. But mainly the multiple minorities groups face the multiple issues and challenges living in Pakistan. I must say that it doesn't mean that the all citizen of Pakistan or entire the majority create the troubles or challenges to the religious minorities. There are only few component or negative elements which really create the troubles for religious minorities who do not want to entertain the religious minorities living here. They really literally hurt the sentiments of the religious minorities by hurting time to time. Either they live in different parts of the different parts of the country, but they face multiple challenges. Even sometimes their community are pushed to burn, and they just face the multiple challenges. I will definitely love to quote here that the religious minorities who were after partition of Pakistan or India, there was a 23 percentage of the population of minorities. Now, which is just going to be less time to time. It is decreasing, and now only the 3.28% population of the minorities are left in the country. And what are the reasons that the behaviors and challenges and discrimination which has been forced to the religious minorities? Well, there are so many things and so many challenges, but recently the hot and very increasing issue in Pakistan, which religious minorities is facing, that is the forced conversion of the Hindu and Christians girls, which are mainly abducted, raped, and then they are pushed to the forced conversion and forced marriages. Ultimately, this includes the assorted forms of interpersonal violence committed against by classmates, intermates, partners, neighbors, and strangers. The religious minorities always feel very marginalized and very vulnerable whenever they just face such type of fears. Even in 2015, there is a report of the media that around 1200 Hindu communities living in in Sindh province, they have left this country. And the challenge and issue when they were questioned, that was the harassment, sexual harassment, and forced conversion of their minors. Well, this is really a big issue in Pakistan because the uh, religious group, especially their identity, their appearance, especially to the women and girls who belong to the different religious group, they face in a big level. Either all the time it has been said that the religious group, especially females, they just get attraction, they fall in love, and they just leave their home. But it is not fact, because the minor girls, especially age of the 12 and 13 and 10 years, sometimes 14 years girls, they are abducted, they are kidnapped. Even we have the laws of in sin which restrict the child marriages. That is the Child Restricted Marriage Act 2013. But still we see that the minor girls, they are abducted, and mainly time to time we hear the cases, we just face the challenges. And even we have such type of laws, policies which protect the minorities living in Pakistan, but still they are not implemented properly, because people are so insecure, especially of the religious group. They do not dare to register any FIR or any case in the law enforcement department, because they fear that maybe whatever they are facing, that will be increased, or they will be double if they are just going to raise their voice. Even the civil society members and human rights activists, time to time, they support, they raise their voice, but in the end, the parents who are mainly responsible to just highlight their cases, they just get back from such type of cases. And that the main reason is that they are fair. Recently, 3 weeks ago, there was a case of young 13 years old girl in Sindh. That girl was abducted even in front of their parents. She was put to force by weapons showing, and she was abducted. And when she was appeared in the court, she just committed, okay, that I have accepted another religion, and I just want to get married to another person. But that fear was showing on her face, that she was very afraid to speak the truth. And mainly it is said that their parents were put on the threats. Even they were told, if they will not take their case to back, or cancel the registration of their daughter's case, they will be put on the high level of threats. Even at the night, in the night timing, their house was put on the fire, and they were threatened that please take your case back. So if the girls or women from, either they belong to Hindu communities, they belong to Christian communities, Sikh communities, if they are willing to get married to the Muslim persons, or they just want to convert their religion, then it is a very big challenge and big question mark for all the religious minorities living in our country, that why only the 12 and 13 years aged girls are put attraction, and they just move to the persons who are the 3 or 4 times older than them. The girl of 12 years old who doesn't know about her own religion, she doesn't have understanding of her own religion, how can she get inspiration of other religion? And then if she once get converted, then why she just get married to the 40 or 50 years old man? The another thing is that if there is the very short of understanding, if the girl is not capable or she doesn't keep any understanding of changing of religion, then in our country we do not have any rules or regulation that the girls, if she wants become adult or get the 18 years of age, and if she wants to go back to her parents, then there is no any rules, because once if you have converted in the majority religion, then you do not have chance to get back from that religion. So that is also a question mark. The parents are in meanwhile mostly cases are not allowed to meet their daughters or their women who just are pushed to the forced conversion and then to forced marriages. Well, there is no any properly laws and protection of such type of crimes which we usually bear in our country. Especially I'm just highlighting this case because this is on the peak, and recent last 3 or 4 weeks we had around 5 to 6 cases of the conversion. And the mainly it happens that when a girl or woman, either she is minor or she is adult, in the short of time, their video clips or visual videos throwing the messages that she has converted herself by her own wish and by her own willingness. She got married over there. But how it can be possible that if a young girl or adult woman, if she goes and she is in love and she just wants to marry to another majority person or another religious person, once she has gone, there is no need to express that sentiment. And why the people from the majority community, they just shoot the video and then that just get it viral, and entire the social media it just appears, and really in a bad ways it just hurt the sentiments of the communities, because they just want to give a message to the religious minorities that that girl or woman has converted herself. Even if any lady or any person is willing and wish to convert his or herself, there is no need to highlight that issue. But if a majority people highlights, that means they deliberately just wants the community to hurt. So, well, this is not only issue only with the Hindu communities, even Christian community face it, and sometimes Sikh communities, girls and women also face such type of issues and challenges. There are so many other reasons when even in Sindh, where different districts and very small villages that are remote areas where there is no access of internet or social media or communication, and where mostly cases occur, take places, and they do not get highlights because they do not have any access except those guys who use mobile or telephone, and they are sensitized nowadays so they can upload the videos and spread the messages. But so many cases just go viral, and many of cases just go unreported on the social media. Even in last 3 to 4 weeks we had almost 5 to 6 cases about the conversions, but those were highlighted by the social medias or from the some guys who just were sensitized and they considered themselves to just spread that message. Or many of cases even are highlighted by the majority people who especially just shoot the videos and spread these clips that these girls have gone by their own wish. Well, it happens so frequently in Pakistan, and especially women and minor girls, they do not feel secure. Even we do not have laws in Pakistan. There was a sorry, there was a bill which was about the protection of the minorities, and that was the main objective and mission to just restrict the forced conversion of religious minorities. But that bill was tabled in 2015, and in 2016 in Sindh province it was passed. But later on it was again cancelled and could not take place as a law. Meanwhile, this same bill was again tabled in assembly in 2019. But unfortunately, that case also that act could not get the place of law. And again, communities are just facing this trouble and this issue, but the government could not be successful um, to get this bill as a law or act. So the minority women or minorities living in Pakistan, they feel secure themselves. There is a big need to work on that, because whenever we talk about the religious minorities issue and their challenges, the mostly people just counter saying this, that the girls get love and affection, and due to that luxurious life they just leave their homes. But in mainly and most of cases we have observed, analyzed that the girls who were pushed to the forced marriages or forced conversion, who are considered that they have left by their own self their houses or their parents, they just got to the people who were already married. And in many cases that those guys already have the children of the same age of that girl or lady to whom they just got married. And even they are farmers, they are also, they do not deal any luxurious life. Then what is the reason that females or girls from Hindu or Christian community, they will love to leave their own parents and their own houses, and they will go for the other poverty face challenges, where the men are already married, they are having their own families, and they will trade. And meanwhile, there is also need of such a challenge, such a accountability and transparency, that once the girls from the minority religions have gone to the another religion, then why they do not have any interaction or space to meet their own parents. Well, there are so many things which we need to work on that, and we just can make requests and can work on. And especially nowadays the forced conversion is the big issue, and we need really a literally solution for that, that at least the girls from different religion can have safe space, and their parents and the minorities living in Pakistan, they can deal with the secure situation and on the secure places. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Seema. It was, we're hugely grateful to you for your contribution, and realise it's almost midnight in Karachi. So we thank you for your patience in staying up so late to speak to us. And I can promise you that I and others will continue to speak out in Parliament against this abhorrent practice of kidnap, rape and forced conversion of young Hindu and Christian girls. And international pressure must be brought to bear on the Pakistani authorities to, as you say, enforce their own laws that are already there to protect children. And I'm sure on behalf of us all, we salute your courage and your determination in not allowing this hideous practice to be swept under the carpet. And we will continue to support you in any way, in every way we can. And the little time we have left, I know we have a question and answer session booked in, so I'm delighted to hand back over to Neville to moderate on the
Thank you.
question and answer session.
Thank you, Brendan, very much. Yeah, well, we've had a good number of questions and fascinating presentations, and thank you to one and all. And I suppose the big question, which I'm going to sort of put out there to any of the MPs here, really, is one which we had in, said, what more should the UK government be doing to help religious minorities in countries like Pakistan and Nigeria? So I don't know whether Alexander, as you as you're there, and Afzal sadly has to. He sends his best.
I'll just jump in very briefly, as well as some things I've highlighted by mentioning the recommendations. The most important thing is talking about it. The most important thing is constantly talking to people and reminding people that it's going on and it's still going on. But I think often it's almost sort of out of sight, out of mind. I think we understandably hear a lot about places like Libya, Iraq, but I think we hear and obviously what's going on with the Uyghurs in China. But I think other aspects like Nigeria, as you mentioned, and other countries, Pakistan, we don't hear nearly as much about. So we really want the government to just be talking about it and keeping that in the mind's eye. And one thing that I'd say is that obviously post-Brexit, we're looking at trade deals. We need to link the two together. If we are trying to do trade with the world, we need to make sure that we do it in a responsible way and use these new trade deals as a way to frankly force countries to protect and look after the minority groups and actually use that leverage. And that is vitally important.
Thank you, Alexander. Brendan, would you like to comment on what more we can do?
I don't necessarily agree with anything that Alexander said, but what I would say is, and I think what's incumbent on politicians, is to ensure that we hold our friends to the same standards as we hold people who are not deemed to be our friends. And we can't have a pick and choose. We cannot turn a blind eye to human rights abuses where it's in our financial or other interests so to do. And it has to be a level playing field. And so it's calling out friends and foes equally and impartially. Excellent.
Now, Sal, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, I will. Before I leave, all I'll say is this. I echo both of my parliamentary colleagues, what they've said. I think that makes sense, using that platform, speaking out. And I think it makes sense also treating this human rights as central, linking it with the trade as well, and also making sure we don't separate that so-and-so is close to us and therefore geopolitically we will turn a blind eye to this and then put something else. I think that double standard, I think actually we lose out on that. And probably something additional I want to add in there is, you know, Britain does have an amazingly rich, diverse communities here. And many of these diaspora communities do have a very good connections with the back countries. So for example, myself, I have a heritage with Pakistan. Now, I do also have a good connections in Pakistan. And I think people like myself and others in similar position actually can play a very effective role in order to push some of these issues. I have done that when I was a member of the European Parliament, and I've done this when I'm a member of Parliament here. I think there's a role in this side as well where people can actually reach out and try to have help with the new sort of legislation and the change in the society which is needed.
Good, thank you. And perhaps I can bring His Grace Archbishop Simon in with us as well, if you can hear me. Just, you said the Pope's visit was remarkable, and you were obviously alongside the Pope. And how would you see British influence in terms of security there? What more can we do? What more can politicians do? What can we do as a charity here to improve security there?
First of all, the Pope visit was something I would describe as a miracle and as a work of the Holy Spirit, because no matter how dangerous was the situation, Pope decides to come and he came. That was fantastic. We, as a Christian, we did a great job. Not just a Christian, to say the truth, all Iraqi people, they welcomed Holy Father with a warm and open heart, and the visit of Holy Father filled our hearts, our life with joy. We will never forget it. And he gave us a hope for a future. And I think the principal message was, there is life. And what we showed to the entire world, that the Christians of Iraq, they are persecuted, they are facing lots of difficulties, but they are still a life church. And that was very important, that the entire world listened to us and watching us, how we welcome our Holy Father. And that, I think, will encourage many organizations. For Church in Need, we have nothing to say because they are doing lots of job. But I think many organizations, they will take your steps on helping to rebuild the life of the Christians of Iraq. Regarding the visit was wonderful, was fantastic. Regarding the UK government, we live there are already in Iraq 2 big centers of the presence of the Christian, Nineveh Plain and Ankawa and the Kurdistan. In the Kurdistan, we are in a good situation now, we thank God. In the Nineveh Plain, we know there is an international fighting there, and undeclared fighting, international fighting on that area. For this, I said in my report, we do not want to be a victim or a price paid for any international agreement between these different parties. We want to keep that area safe for the presence of the Christian. If we lose that area, I assure you will be the end. So as a British government and other international countries, they have to take it seriously, to put pressure on Iraqi government to assure the security of that area and to assure it by a formal Iraqi army. That's what we want. Formal Iraqi army outside the city, and inside the city, our sons, the Christian community, the police from the Christian, they can assure the security inside. But the most important, to take out anyone who has nothing to do with that area. So it's not a simple job, but I think together with the entire international community, we can do it. It's very important area. Please keep it in your mind. Try to do everything to assure the security and the continuing living of the Christian in the Nineveh Plain.
Those of us who've travelled in Iraq a number of times, passing through all the different checkpoints of different militia with different Shiite groups and others, you're not sure which they are. So we know the feeling, but I remember the message there was security, education and employment. And if the stability can be encouraged in that way, then if the British government could do something on that, that could be so important. Just because of time, we're going to have to call it a day or an evening soon. But I'd just like to put it to John, because especially on the Middle East, Joe Sidlika from ICN wrote in from ICN, and she said, could I ask a question about Christians and Muslims in the Holy Land? Both Christians and Muslims have seen their places of worship attacked or made inaccessible at times. Has the situation got worse or better in the past year? And what can we do to support the faiths there? So John, I don't know whether you'd like to give a brief answer, if one can, to such a involved question, but important question.
Well, it's a critical question, and we know that both the Christian and the Muslim community in that region have suffered, and the violence that's been orchestrated against their communities and their places of worship is something that really needs to be highlighted. And indeed, details of that are present in our report. And of course, for many of the communities have suffered considerably under the period of lockdown. We've been very, very concerned about the situation for those wanting to keep the opportunity of going to pilgrimage sites open in Jerusalem and in Bethlehem. That situation has been made very much more difficult. Of course, we need to remember that despite the special status for Jews in Israel, Judaism is not necessarily the official religion of the state. The state institutions are secular and function according to the model of Western democracies. But nevertheless, provisions specific to Judaism do predominate in social practices, such as the observance of the Sabbath, kosher food, etc. And these can create tensions between observant and non-religious Jews. And so we're saying in Israel the situation is one of not necessarily any marked change, but in Palestine we've noted some improvements. But of course, it's very difficult for people to express and proselytize. But with Aid to the Church in Need, with our work supporting interfaith cooperation and communication through the Alika Center, Muslim-Christian dialogue in Palestine, and the Jerusalem Center for Jewish-Christian Relations, which is a forum for discussion at different levels between Christian and Jewish communities, has done tremendous work in breaking down barriers, in helping to rebuild, and our work supporting the Christian community through the sale of olive wood items, be they cribs, crosses, and of course, as and when we can, we'd love as a charity to continue to with the pilgrimages that Neville has led, and those things are so important. That lifeline of faith that's critical, and we hope very much one day, COVID willing, to be able to do that.
And I think it was something the Archbishop said earlier, which struck me today. We've talked about many faiths, but the Abrahamic faiths and the meeting of the Pope in Ur, and the sadness, there are really no Jews there now in Iraq. But we have to say and remind our own benefactors at Aid to the Church in Need very often, these are our homelands we're talking about, and our biblical homelands. And that's not just what we call the Holy Land here, Palestine, Israel. It's also Iraq. It's also Syria. It's also Lebanon. They're our biblical homelands. And the response of Aid to the Church in Need benefactors and supporters, where especially religious freedom is not respected, has been of deep encouragement, I know, to our brothers and sisters who suffer for their faith today. So John, thank you very much for that. Brendan, I'll hand back quickly to you, because I'm sorry we've got to call a day on the questions and answers, and I'll just wrap up at the end if I may, but thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Neville. And just a last few words of thanks to everyone who has taken part this evening, to John Pontifex, Bishop Domi, Archbishop Siman, Alex Stafford MP, Abdul Khan MP, Seema Mashaswari, and of course Neville, yourself, for the work you've done. But also there's a lot of work being done behind the scenes to make this possible, and a huge thank you to Finn Shinner, Catherine Crowson and Saxon Ricks for the organisation and the technical support for getting this working tonight. And to everyone listening, either live or watching this later on, I really do ask you to get the report, read the report, and talk about the report, because that link between us and our brothers and sisters who are living in fear of their lives many times is absolutely vital, and we have to know what they're living in order to live their faith. So please get the report, read it, and talk about it. So thank you, everybody. And Neville, I'll hand back to you for the final goodbye.
I can't really add apart from thanking Brendan, and please do, I think on the screen and on the acnuk.org website, you can go there and find the link to the report. Don't be put off. It's not as the full report is there if you want to go on the ACN International website, but the executive summary is first class, and that'll give you more than enough to think about, pray about, and to encourage you in all that you do. So thank you to one and all for joining us today, and we really appreciate it. And may God bless you, and we appreciate all that you do here through Aid to the Church in Need, through other organisations around the world in the support for the freedom of religion or belief. And thank you very much for being with us at this launch. Bye-bye for now.